stuff. Whatever we done, it had to be done right, and we were clean. And Mom would take a clean cloth and put black pepper in it and dip it down in real, just as warm as you could stand it. And she'd drop that, let it, hold it over big as ear and let it drop down in his ear. And did you know that would help his ear?
Warm water and pepper?
Mm-hmm. You didn't put the peel pepper now, you just put the pepper in the cloth. It was a hard life, really, but we just kind of felt like everybody was having it hard, but Bubba says them old Scots, you know, which they did borrow all the time. Of course, if Mama borrowed anything, she'd usually try to pay it back. You know, people used to borrow from each other, but we'd always pay it back.
You mean people would borrow from y'all?
Yeah, they borrowed from the whole neighborhood. And if you had it, you know. And sometimes, maybe, you know, you run out of a lot of things. And but sometimes then you wouldn't have it to let nobody borrow it. But Mama nursed the whole neighborhood. Every time a baby was born, Mama was right there. Everybody depended on Mama. And I used to go with her, you know, at night sometimes. Walk. You know, of course, it wasn't all that far, but it was, you know, so really, everybody depended on Mama for any kind of sickness. And Coma, I may have told you about him having that malaria fever. And he always called Mama Doc. And any little thing he'd say, go get Doc. And so, and he got where he wouldn't take no medicine from nobody but Mama. I think he was in bed about 3 months. And so he had to learn to walk after he finally got over it.
What did he have?
Malaria fever.
Oh, malaria.
And he wouldn't even take medicine from Maggie. He wouldn't take no medicine from nobody. Mama had to be right there to give it to him. Because he trusted Mama, I guess.
Joe didn't have a regular doctor that could come out and see you or anything?
It was a doctor named Dr. Golson. But sometimes, you know, he'd come out. But
where was he, in Prattville?
Yeah. But see, they didn't have good transportation back then, really, you know, like they have now. Mm-hmm. And but they hardly ever had a doctor when a baby was born. And so Mama, you know, Mama did all of that. She got a nursing course through May.
Correspondence.
Yeah. And she had worked some with Dr. Campbell. You know, at times she would, you know, go with him on cases whenever he'd go to people, you know, who see what was wrong, doctor and everything. My Mama really enjoyed that. I think that's really what she wanted to do. But then, see, after her daddy got married, I don't think Mama was ever really happy. Because I think that's what she really wanted to do.
Why did they, I mean, how old were they when they married?
I think Mama was about 18. I think Dad was about 19.
But you don't think she really wanted to get married?
Well, see, Rudy, she was only 6 years old when her mother died. And then she's only 7 years old when her daddy died. And her daddy, I think on his deathbed, asked his brother, Uncle Alf, to take Mama. See, Mama was a twin, her and Uncle Paul. And then Earl, she had 2 brothers. And so he take Mama and Uncle Paul But Mama would have to mind everybody. She'd have to, whatever they would say. And by the way, she talked to her grandmother was pretty hard on her. But she said she'd have to get up early in the mornings and go out and milk. They had it on a dairy. And she'd have to go out and milk the cows and prepare vegetables and all of that stuff before she could even go to school. And I think her grandmother had about 12 children. And then she had an aunt. And,
did the other children have to do it?
I don't think so. See, Mama would do it. And Uncle Paul, he just didn't like people to always telling him what to do and what he couldn't do and all that kind of stuff. And so he just ran away. And back then they had what they call reform school. So that's where they put him in reform school. And Mama said she used to. She said she'd take whippings for him because he got so many whippings. And but she was just from pillow to post, you might say. And had to wait on everybody. And I can remember in Atchison, one that she didn't have any children. She adopted a boy. And she didn't do nothing. I mean, she just didn't do anything. And Mama had to wait on the hand and food. You know, and she just was, like I say, she's just from pillow to post at night, so. And I think she kind of, felt like she was ready to get out from under all of that.
So that's why she married?
I guess so. And a lot of people say they don't see how in the world Mom and Daddy got married. And so Granddaddy had a buggy, it had a top over it and a horse. And they were living out at Joffrey, well, between Joffrey and where Sammy's uncle run that store, it was called. And that's where I was born. That's where Uncle Al lived. And they used to have what they call box suppers. And so I think that's where Mom and Dad lived. And then they lived out there, I think about maybe 2 years. Anyway, that's where I was born. And then the rest of the children were born up there, where John lived. And see, Mr. Gordon never did charge Daddy no rent for that house. It was an old house, but at least we had
Place to live?
a place to live.
I don't imagine there were too many people any poorer
Mm-mm.
what y'all were.
No. And see, like I say, Daddy worked on that WPA when he could, because they didn't have that all the time. And so, of course, he didn't make very much, but it was better than nothing. And
Has he always been kind of gruff? I mean,
yeah,
mean like?
well,
I mean, I don't know if mean's the right word. He just, he's always kind of gruff, it seems like.
well, he always done what he wanted to do. He was sick all his life. Granddaddy never made him work. About all he ever done was food with chickens. And he thought he said he always wanted to fly. And he thought, that he'd make him some wings off of some big old, some kind of a bird, I don't know what it was. And they had what they call where they kept all the tubes and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what to call the little old house. But anyway, Daddy got up on top of it, and he had those wings fixed, and he thought he could fly. And when he jumped off of it, naturally he couldn't fly, and he hit the ground. It almost killed him.
How old was he when he did that?
Well, he was probably in his early teens, but that's all he ever done, from what I can understand, was just food with chickens, and I guess that's why he always wanted to have all kind of chicken. I think he even had peacock. You know, they're pretty.
So, well, he had a peacock. Mowing Pawpaw had a peacock. I remember him having a peacock.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I'm saying. He always had chickens. And so, see, he never had no responsibility. You know, like Mama did. Your Mama had to be responsible for so much. But Dad didn't. He done what he wanted to do, which it wasn't good for him. Even though he was a sickly child, he should have had been taught to have some responsibility. If it wasn't nothing but carrying a few pieces of wood in the house. See, you had to cut stove wood and fireplace wood. And so from what I can understand, Granddad never made him do nothing. And which wasn't good for him. But, you know, he was real knowledgeable of a lot of things that you didn't think he knew anything about, really. I used to enjoy sitting down talking with him. And anything he could make a decision. And anything that he wanted to know what do I do, he always let him do. He'd ask David about everything. David used to go up there and sit and talk. And, and I think he looked forward to that. And so, ever since David's thing,
So, I mean, David, since he's been old enough to drive or go up there or whatever, he's been the one always going and doing things for him.
Yeah. And of course, Austin helped him out too. Then when Austin finished school, well, then he got him a job and he was gone. David been here all his life. And he's just always, all the time, always doing something for Mom and Dad. And really did, with the children. But it was that, nobody's fault. He was just born at that time. But Mama would always call him Dad. Because when Austin was in school, or even before Austin was in school, he used to, was always doing something for Mama and Daddy, but not like Daddy. But Austin, he'd pay Mama's light bill for her a lot of times, and he'd always help to buy coal and help to pay on, some of the bills and things after he got a job. See, Austin didn't get married until a long time after he'd already finished school.
Yeah, I know.
He was engaged to Catherine Lavender.
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
you told me about that. And then I think she just kind of gave him an ultimatum or something about school or marriage, and he took school, and so that was it.
Right. Austin said he had nothing to offer, and he did not want to get married until he finished school, which I can understand that too. If she wasn't willing to wait, well, a lot of people, you don't know how to feel about it. But the thing about it is, it would have been a struggle. She was smart too. She was real smart in school. And often worked during the summer. Him and David both. They worked in the gin shop some, and used to, the government would pay you to plant so much, cotton and stuff. And
No, I remember going with David on that.
Did you? Well, Austin used to do that too.
They've gone with both of them, and
You probably did.
go to the cotton fields and measure them and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so they just done most anything they could get to do. You'd just be glad to get anything to do then, really, and both of them worked at the funeral home. And David had 3 or 4 jobs. Went to school a half a day. And sometimes be up all night long running the animals, working down at that funeral home. And Mr. Gates was hard on Dave. Was hard on him. But Austin wouldn't take it. If he stared at Austin stared right back at him. And Austin didn't take nothing off of it. But now David wouldn't. And so David had mentioned to me one time that some things that Mr. Gates had said to him. And I said, well, David, you don't have to take that. And I said, that's why we had to have a private telephone put in, because of, them having to get calls all during the night and everything. And so I said, next time he calls David, I said, I'm going to listen. And I did. Boy, that's one time I got mad. And so I said, okay, let me talk to Mr. Gates. So I was listening. He was using other language too. And I said, Mr. Gates, I said, I heard what you said today. I said, I know that we need the money. And I know that David works hard. And I said, but he don't have to take that. And I says, he won't be back.
Good for
Just
you.
as calm as I could. And I told David, and then David went to work down when I was at Fountain City. He went to work down at Fountain City.
How old was David when that happened?
About 15.
What did he say to him?
You get your, what kind of
down there.
AWS and using all kind of ugly language, just like David wasn't nothing but an old dog or a slave or something like that. Boy, it made me mad. I told him, I said, I know we need the money. And I said, he don't, and see, I said, he don't have to take things like that, Mr. Gates. I said, I'm sorry, but he won't be back. And see, Mr. Gates and Mr.
Well, Austin wasn't working for him at that time.
Oh yeah, Austin worked.
Did Austin quit at the same time, both of them?
Austin wouldn't take nothing off of it.
So Austin stayed on working?
Yeah, Austin stayed on work until I think he started school and all. And Austin he wouldn't take it off of it. And I guess he thought that David had to work. We'd see David was helping us to live. You know what I mean? He wasn't keeping the money for himself. I couldn't have made it by myself, really. And so then he had that job cleaning up next door. And then Mr. Smith was so good to me. Miss Smith was too.
I remember them. They seemed like they were good people.
Oh, they were. And Howard said that Mr. Smith told him one time when he went by there, after he sold the varsity, he started selling worms, people to fish. And
I remember that too. I remember him having the bait shop.
Right. And Howard would go by there sometimes because then, we'd go fishing and said, Mr. Smith told him, said, if I ever have another restaurant or anything, said, I would want.
Mm-hmm.
He said he would want me to work for him. And but really, that was that was a great favor to me that Mr. Smith gave me a job. Alan was only 3 months old. We was about to be put out in the street because we was 3 months behind with the rent. And I knew I had to do something. And I knew that I had to get a job, and I knew that I wasn't educated enough to even think about getting a job where you had to even use a cash register or anything like that. But I told myself, I said, I can watch and see, and I said, I think I can do it. So I called Mr. Smith. I didn't tell him I couldn't use it. I didn't know how to use a cash register. And I called Mr. Smith, and I told him, I said, Mr. Smith, I said, I need a job bad. I said, I have got to do something. And I said, I have a baby who is only 3 months old. But I said, I'll work any time of hours that you need me to work. So he let me pick the hours that was the best for me, and he did, and he told me to come on to work. So that's how, then I was paid $25 a week.
How much was the rent?
$50 a month, besides the other bill. And
I guess Paul wasn't helping at all then?
mm-mm.
Never did though, did he?
Mm-mm. No, that's when we was living up in Washington.
Right.
And so I don't know how long I worked for Mr. Smith, but anyway, I had to deal with him too, and that was pure torment. And so he would call down there sometimes and tell me what all he's coming down and what all he's going to do, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't supposed to be on the telephone, talking like to him. I was supposed to be working, and so I just tell him, we'll see about it later or something like that. And he just called me all kind of names.
He called you at the Varsity Grill, you know?
Oh yeah, and tell me he's coming down there and he's going to kill me. And I don't know what all. And so I never did, just fuss at him or get into a big fight with him or nothing. I just knew what I had to do, and I was going to do it. And I try to talk to him, and go in one ear and out the other. And so, but I think Mr. Smith understood what was going on, and he never did. Him or B, neither one ever did get on me about it. Because I guess they knew it wasn't my fault, because, I worked it around it. And then a lot of people, and he had really got dangerous. I mean, he really got dangerous. And Mama was worried to death. She kept us so nervous all the time that she didn't know what to do. And so Fred was that man's name that worked over at, they had what they call these white truck company. And there's this woman that was getting all of his money. And me and him had talked several different times, and his name was Fred. And I told him, I said, well, Fred, I've done like everything. He come over and he told me he's fixing to kill him. And I said, well, Fred, I said, don't do that. I said, it'll just get you into a lot of trouble. And I said, it's not worth it. And I said, I've done all I know to do. I said, I can't, change him. And but I did ask him not to kill him. And so he said, well, he says, and he'd already jumped on him and beat him up, something awful. And I said, well, I said, it's hard. I said, I know it's hard, but I said, just don't kill him, because then you'll get yourself in deep trouble. So anyway, it, just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so I don't know who it was. Anyway, he jerked the telephone out of the wall, and he was going to kill Maggie, and he was going to kill Sammy.
Paul was?
Yeah, and he was going to kill Wayne, and he's crazy, just crazy, and just after me with a butcher knife, and just all kind of old stuff like that, and he'd tell me if I'd go to church that I'm going to be behind that door, and you come back and I'm going to shoot your, what kind of head off. I just kept on dressing that, and I went home to church just like he had never said nothing. I didn't know whether he was going to be behind the door when I come in or not. And so sometimes he'd be still laying on the bed, still drunk, And so come in and just tried to choke me to death. And I was so glad that, because I hated Boston, that didn't be in it. But, that he was in school and all, and he almost had a nervous breakdown. Austin did, because, he knew what a hard time I was having, trying to, reach children, and trying to even quit school. I said, no, Austin. I said, don't quit school. I said, I want you to get your education. I said, we'll make it. And I'd sit up some nights till 2 o'clock in the morning talking to him, Austin. And your daddy hated it. He hated Austin because Austin didn't approve of what he was doing. And so Austin just got what he wouldn't take nothing off of it. And it made Austin mad, because him and David both could see what he was doing. And so I tried to keep everything hid just as long as I possibly could. But you'd come to a point to where, there wasn't no hiding it. And so he would brought that woman over to the house I reckon 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, both of them drunk. I had to get up and go back with him to take her home. And then I had to go to work. And so, like I say, Ray, it just got to the place, it just wasn't no handling. And I couldn't have done it if it hadn't been Boston Day to help, handle it. And, but he was free-hearted. He'd give you the shirt off his back. But what did that count?
I know it. Well, but Austin had to use his money a lot. I mean, he could get him out of jail and stuff, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. See, Austin would work and try to save his money to go to school home. Well, he'd get in jail all the time. And he wouldn't ask Austin for his money. He'd put it on me to ask Austin. Oh, I'll pay him back. I'm going to pay him back now. I'm going to pay him back. Who's that sound like?
Ricky Rucker.
Absolutely. And I knew he wasn't going to pay Austin back. And I knew Austin wouldn't have no money to go to school, And so anyway, make him mad. Ooh, he hated Austin. And Austin did give him money several times. And he went to school one year on I cooked cornbread.
I remember mailing it.
cooked cornbread and mailed him cornbread, and you could buy a thing of buttermilk for a nickel. And that's what he mostly lived on the whole year, because he didn't have no money. He worked the whole summer, and it was gone just like that. He could have $500 or $600 in his pocket. Next day he wouldn't have a penny. And I tried my best to let him, to get him to let me, because see, he was a good mechanic, about the best that there was, and couldn't even write his name. And so he thought Austin thought he was a bug, you know, and
He was.
he was, and so and I tell him, I said, now you know, I said, Austin worked hard for that money, and I said, he's planning on going to school. Oh, I'm gonna pay you back. I'm gonna pay him back, but he never did. And so anyway, it ended up to where nobody could do nothing with it.
How many times does Austin have to give him money?
I don't know.
A lot.
A lot of times, so he, Austin had done taken just about all he could take off of him. He was ready to kill him, and I didn't even know that David was fixing to kill him until not too often long ago. Of course, don't say nothing to David about it, but and I talked to Austin, and I told Austin, I said, don't do nothing like that. I said, don't do nothing but ruin your life. I said, this money's not worth it. And I said, just don't get that out of your mind, Austin. And I said, something will work out. I said, but I don't want you to do nothing like that, because that'll be the rest of your life that you'll have to live with it. And I said, don't do it. And so I think Austin finally, just accepted what I told him and maybe studied about it. But now, I didn't even know that David was about to kill him one time too. They said if he'd have moved another inch, that would have been it. But he brought it all on himself, really.
Oh yeah.
You know, and look, and who was telling me not too awfully long ago that Lane had said that everything that Mama told him worked out exactly like she said it was going to be. And I used to tell him, I said, the children are not going to be little always. And I said, how can you expect them to respect you and care for you whenever you're not even taking your responsibility to even help raise these children? And that was right, Rudy. That was right. And so I said, all these people now that you think are your friends, I said, they're not your friends. I said, all they want is your money. And I said, you may get sick later on in life. And I said, who can, I said, you can't depend on your friends. I said, they won't even know you then. And I said, you'll be by yourself. I said, and if don't any of the children feel like that they can help you, take care of you, I said, it won't be their fault. And sure enough, he died by himself. And I said, don't even count me. I said, don't count me now if you don't want to. I said, just think about your children. And oh, they make him mad. And so he people that he put the Austin and David through college. And it made Mama so mad. And I said, well, Mama, don't worry about it. I said, people know. And they did, really. They did. And sometimes you just really get sorry for them. But, and everybody, would just say what good children he had. And, and they couldn't understand why that he would want, live that way. And I don't know. He just he wanted his cake and eat it too. Really, you've heard that saying. But he was about to run everybody crazy. And
did you have to get an attorney? I mean, to make him leave you alone? Or?
Well, I finally had to get a peace warrant. Mr. Grant was the sheriff then.
So you didn't have to get an attorney, you just went to the sheriff?
Yeah.
And
somebody did. I don't know.
And then you have to have an attorney to get your divorce, or you just go to the
yeah.
courthouse?
Oh yeah, I had to have an attorney. And that dial.
Yeah. And you had to pay him?
Yeah. And he was about $250. He only got charged for $60. Because see, he knew me, because he come to get me all the time. And well, everybody around, they knew me. All the police and Mr. Grant. Oh, Mr. Grant was good shit. And so I think he's the one that got the peace warrant part. And said they had to put him under peace warrant. And so that's what we did. And Mama was just scared to death all the time. But she's just on pins and needles, afraid that, he's going to kill some of us.
So how old were you when you married?
Say 15.
You were 15.
Just barely. Well, the next day I would have been 15.
All right, and so you were what, 16 when Austin was born?
17.
17. And so how long were y'all married?
20, 21, or 22 years.
That you were married to Paul?
Mm-hmm. That's how.
But how long did it take? I mean, because I know when we were at Washington Street that he was gone most of the time. So when did you, I guess, get that peace bond? Or when did you finally get a divorce? How long did it take you? I mean, you didn't have any happy years with him then, did you? Even
the first 2 years that we were married, things were pretty good. And he worked for Coma. Him and Coma didn't get along at all. They'd get in fights all the time. So Sam the Ramos hired him to drive a lumber truck. And that's when he got started.
drinking and stuff?
Drinking and running around. That's when he got started.
And that started 2 years after you were married.
Yeah, 2 years.
And so you put up with all that stuff for 20 years.
21 years. Yes, and I told him. He didn't ever believe that I'd leave. He never really believed that I would. And I told him, I said, now, if I ever leave, I won't be back. And so he didn't think that I'd ever leave. But I meant it really. I said, once if I ever leave, I will not come back. But see, he didn't believe that. He didn't think I'd leave. Not with all the children. And sometimes children would rather be out here, and because that was hard on Austin Davis, especially. Lang remembers a lot. And so it had come to the point that it was getting very, very dangerous. And that's what Mr. Grant said, that I didn't need to be in in something like that and not knowing what's going to happen. And so that was one thing that I figured it was time, you know. And of course Alan was living, and I never did refuse him coming to see you and Alan. Yeah, mine. Of course Austin David didn't get him about see it, and so he normally he knew when they was working when he'd come, and he want me to let him take you and Alan and keep y'all over the weekend. And I wouldn't do it really because I didn't want y'all.
We did go one weekend, I remember.
Yeah, that's
we
what I
went
was
one
gonna,
weekend over to Montgomery.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think maybe I did let y'all go a few times. But
that's the only time I remember him. He picked us up on the corner, me and Alan.
Right.
We drove. We were going, of course, 31. He stopped at the store that you worked at. That
Garage place.
well, no, it was a store. What was the name of that store you worked at? The grocery store.
Mr. Knight.
Yeah, Mr. Knight. Got him a Coke, poured out half of it, filled the rest of it with bourbon. We went on to Montgomery. He got me an apple, and Alan an apple, and my lips were so chapped when I bit the apple, blood went everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, we went over to, I remember in Montgomery where he lived, in this old apartment building, and when we got there, him and about 4 others, they just sat around and drank.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan and I, and the next morning, and I couldn't have been very old, I told him I was going outside, and I went outside and I walked downtown Montgomery, and then walked back about 4 hours later. Left that early in the morning and came back after dinner, and he didn't even know
he was gone.
No.
See, that's the reason why.
I don't know what Alan was doing the whole time.
I ain't no telling. I ain't really telling. And y'all didn't get nothing about gold. Y'all didn't get nothing about going ready. And so, I didn't want y'all to be in that position and him driving drunk all the time like that. And so anyway, but I never did tell none of you that you couldn't see him. And I left that up to your children. And Brenda said that she always thought that he was dead. Said when her and David was dating, said David never mentioned his dad. It was always his mama. And Brenda thought he was dead. Rob and Jim and them didn't know the difference. They never didn't know nothing about it.
He really may as well been dead.
Because David he couldn't even stand to talk about it. And so, anyway, he wasn't helping to raise y'all. He wasn't supporting you. And he did a few times give me a little bit of money, but my goodness alive.
He lived real good at the expense of everybody else.
Right. And I used to tell him too that he was killing himself, drinking and carrying on and all like he was doing.
How old was he when he died?
I can't remember right off, but it was only about 2 years difference in mine and his age. And so he couldn't have been 73. He's been dead. Lane knows. I think Lane might know exactly how old he was.
He's been dead 10 years.
At least 10 years, anyway.
Oh, so he was early 60s then, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what he died from?
Well, he had cancer of the throat.
He did?
Yeah.
I really ought to find out what he died from, what specific type of cancer.
I think that's what it was, cancer.
I can find out.
And so that, do you remember Rudy? And somebody told me he was real sick. And I told you, and I said, I told you, I said, Rudy, your daddy is real sick. And I said, if you want to go to see him, go to see him. But I said, if you don't want to, it's fine. I said, whatever you want to do. So you went over there to see him. That was when he was living in Montgomery. You may have remembered, in some kind of old apartment. Anyway, I'd heard it was filthy. And so when you come back, you told me, you said, Mama, I'll never go to see him again for what he said to you. Something about school. I don't know what it was he said to you. But it really upset you. It hurt your feelings.
Oh, or
real
something.
bad.
He just asked me what I was still doing in school and about being a waste of time and I ain't gonna ever, you know, ain't gonna
just stuff like
to
that, I think. And I remember you telling me, said, I'll never go to see him again, Mama. That's what you told me.
He had that little old dog.
Dog, Chihuahua, yeah. And and then one time, see, you was still in Tuscaloosa in school, I think it was. And he called you.
Oh, and I was at in Birmingham.
Oh, yeah, Birmingham, that's where it was at. And he called you.
Wanted to get his teeth fixed.
Said this is your daddy. And I don't know how you, I guess that's the way you recognized it. And so you told him, what I think you told him.
I told him I wasn't a dentist.
And that your daddy was in practice.
Right, yeah, I did tell him that.
And that's all you said to him.
Yeah, I said no, I said you're not my father. My father's in travel. And second thing is that I'm not a dentist. If you need dental work, you can call the dental school.
See,
and hung up.
Yeah, that's what it was, really. Because see, he thought you was a dentist. And see, he's kind of like Ricky. If you didn't know him, he could talk you into anything. He could talk you, and you had to know him. And you couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe a word he said. And you couldn't depend on him. Couldn't depend on him for nothing. And so that's why I said I knew what I had to do.
Well, you probably just didn't do it quick enough. I mean, letting him hang around that long, you know?
Yeah.
You know, looking back, it might have been better for everybody if he'd been gone a lot sooner, wouldn't it? But, you know.
Would have, but then,
you know, you want to.
You think back, well, you tried.
That's right. You gave every opportunity, didn't you?
And I just pure got down on my knees and begged Jimmy McGriff not to put him in prison, because he had given Jimmy McGriff a $20 bad check. Jimmy was fixing to put him in prison. And Jimmy come down there and told me I was working, large degree. And Jimmy told me, he said, Margaret, I'm fixing to put him in penitentiary. And I just really begged Jimmy not to do that. I said, which it might have been the best thing to let him go on and done it. But I just, you know, I didn't want you children to have to be faced. You know, other children can be cruel. And I didn't want the children at school to look down on you children. Your daddy's in prison, you know, because it can affect children, really. And so I said, Jimmy, I said, I don't want my children to have to be faced with something like that. I said, and I asked, I said, please don't. I said, I'll pay you back, Jimmy. I said, if it's only a few dollars a week, I said, I'll give it back to you. And he almost didn't do it. He said, Margaret, he needs to do that. Which I guess at that time, you know, I may have thought so. Well, I may have thought so too, that he needed to be there, and sometimes I didn't care if he was. But I didn't want you children to be, you know, faced with it. And so I just told him, I said, Jimmy, please don't. I said, I don't want my children to be faced with something like that. And so he finally said, well, he says, if he ever does it again, if I ever have anything ever comes up again, he said, I'm gonna put him in prison. And so I did. I paid him, which I didn't have. I had to do without some things and let some things go. Because I knew to the very penny what I had to do with it, really. And so I finally paid him $20. See, I only made $25 a week. And of course, then Mr. Smith and the goodness of him would let David come in, and mop and fill up the drink boxes and clean up some, in his back and stuff like that for $5 more, which Mr. Smith done it out of the goodness of his heart because he knew that I needed it. And and then, like I say, David, then he had to do that job, next door, clean up. And so,
well, Mama, how long after when you started working at the varsity, how long did you work at the varsity grill? You said you started when Alan was about 3 months old?
Yeah. And
well, you didn't actually divorce Paul then until, what, Alan was about 5 or something, didn't you?
Well, I think he was about 2.
Oh, he was 2? He was
2 or 3, because it was at least 2 years longer before
okay, so Alan was about 2 or 3 then.
Yeah.
Well, how long after that did you meet Biggie?
Well, I still worked at the varsity grill, and then he'd come in there. You remember how he was telling you today how you used to crawl up on that stool and talk to him, and I asked him a million questions.
How old was I? Do you remember?
He was 5 years older than Alan, so he was about
7 or 8?
7, 8 years old. And see, Alan don't know the difference as far as to Alan, how old's his daddy?
Yeah.
And of course you was old enough to know, but it didn't really bother you. It didn't seem to bother you.
I don't remember it bothering me.
And that's what I say. If it did, I never realized that it bothered you.
It did not. I know it bothered David, and I know in Austin, I know they had trouble accepting it, and I remember a few incidences that caused some problems between them. But I never had a problem with it. But I guess it was because of being at that age.
Oh yeah, and it was hard for them. It was really hard. Of course, Lane, he kind of, I don't know, I reckon it was because Lane was on the go. He'd always kind of pet Lane, but he would do it in a way that was kind of deceiving, like, I can't stand that. And Lane, course,
who would?
Your daddy.
Oh.
And try to make Lane think he was something that he wasn't. You know what I mean? And I was to blame for all of it. Everything that happened, I was to blame. It's your mom. It's your mom. And he used to tell me all the time, ain't none of them going to turn out to be worth it, you know what, the way you're raising them. And I'd say, well, we'll see. And then I'd say within myself, I said, not out loud, I just think within myself, Lord, please don't let none of them walk in his footsteps. Please, Lord, don't let none of them walk in his footsteps. But he'd say, yeah, he'd tell me that all the time. One of them going to turn out to be. I think he was jealous of something, really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly how to put it, but I never tried to make him feel low. You know what I mean? He could have, if he'd have wanted to, he could have been a good person if he'd have wanted to. And like I say, Ricky's a lot like.
Oh, it seems like, he'd be the spitting image of him.
Mm-hmm. Had a good personality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
3 hard.
I saw Ricky the other day, I told you.
Yeah.
He came out when I was out at David's.
Mm-hmm.
Just as personable and likable as you could be. But
yeah.
you just can't believe a word that comes out of his mouth or anything else.
Never knew
Just like when I had all that eye surgery and stuff done for him. I had $10,000 worth of work done for him.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I didn't tell him, how much it was worth or anything else, but he said he's going to pay me back, and I got him some glasses, and yeah, he's going to pay me back,
That was the end of it.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, I never expected to be paid back. I knew I wasn't going to get it when I went into it.
Well, that's just the way I become too, Rudy. I knew that I couldn't depend on it.
Yeah.
For nothing.
Well, now, how long after you divorced Paul did...
Me and Hal get married?
Yeah.
It was about 2 years, a little over.
About 2 years.
Yeah. You see, that's when I had Austin and David, helping me.
And he was working at Fountain City at that time. He had
Yeah,
just moved to Prattville or something.
And he come in the varsity, and that's why he'll say a lot of times, but he didn't always give me no $10 bill, and then said Mama would keep the change when I got me a piece of pie and a cup of coffee, and you've heard him say that, really. But that's how we met.
How old were you then?
Well, I was 32, 30. Let's see, I was about 36 or 38. 38, I think, when I got married. Well, that's what I said.
Because y'all been married over 30-something years, haven't you?
Yeah, I think we married in 61. And, but Rudy, I put a lot of thought into getting married again. And I did not want you children to have to be responsible for me. I wanted y'all to go to school. I set goals. And my first goal was that I hoped that I could live long enough to see all you children grown and what each one would be. And then I wanted all of you to get a good education. And I may have stressed education too much, but that's what I wanted so bad.
I don't think you can't stress it enough.
I wanted so bad for y'all, for you children to get a good education so that y'all would be able to live a life that you could be able to make ends meet, be able to enjoy some things in life that you wanted to do, and have something that you wouldn't have to be under so much pressure, wondering where your next meal was coming from, and have a good life. That's what I wanted for all your children. And then, I think about a lot of times. Well, and I don't know at the times how it is said that you just don't see a family like that where all of them get a good education and where all of them turn out to be good. And see, none of you never give me no problem, and no problems at all. And we all got along so well, each one taking their part, and they did. And it didn't worry me that y'all wouldn't do what I did y'all to do. And even Lane, 10 years old, Alan, 3 months old, and you was small. I didn't worry that Lane wouldn't do what I told her to do, and I showed her how to take care of Adam and what to do. And you showed me a 10-year-old child now. It'll take a 3-month-old child and take care of in years. You know, just live through. But I just had that trust in y'all, and that, you know, that y'all would do it, and I just sit and talk to y'all, tell you what we had to do, and what each one of you to do, and you know, and just stuff like that. And so it I don't know, everything just fell in place, you know, as y'all grew. Things just fell in place. And so I think a lot of times that I have really been blessed. And I know I have. And then see, there's my grandchildren. I've enjoyed my grandchildren. There's my great-grandchildren. And I think about Teddy so much. I think about Teddy so much. You know. And of course I don't question why, because I guess it was a purpose. Everything. And two, going back to Mama, my conscience is clear as far as doing all that I could for her and Dad, really, because I feel like I did. And then I know Mama helped me a lot, and Mama was, you know, she was good too, and she loved all you children. And a lot of people used to ask me all the time, said, Margaret, so don't you get jealous? Because Austin seems to love Mom better than he does you. It never entered my mind. I wanted him to love her, Ruth. I didn't feel like that if he did love her more than he did me. I wasn't jealous, you know. Let him love her. It was good for her too. It was real good for Mom. She, you know, because all those children were gone, and you know, she never was satisfied, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, let Austin love her, let him love her. And so it didn't ever enter my mind of ever being jealous. And then a lot of people tell me, well, Margaret, how are you going to raise them? You can't raise them 5 children by yourself. I said, oh, yes, I can. You know, I said, nobody's getting my children. And I mean it really. I said, Dad had to kill me. Because you know how a lot of times people go in and try to take the children away from them.
Probably more so now than back then, I imagine.
Yeah.
But you didn't have any state-supported systems back there. I mean, if you didn't have any money, you just didn't have any money. And
Right.
I think either your churches or
Right.
some organizations helped out or whatever. I guess, did the
Right.
church help us any or anybody?
Yeah, they helped by, you know, giving us some food along,
Yeah.
you know, and so that never dawned on me that nobody was going to ever try to take my children. If they did, that's what I said, you know, that nobody wasn't getting it. They'd had to kill me for, you know, because I knew that we'd make it, you know, some way. And, but I meant nobody wasn't getting my children. Just to think that somebody come in and take your children.
Oh, they do it all the time now.
I know.
But
But
sometimes
some of
it
them, they
needs.
don't care.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes it needs to be done too,
Right,
though.
right, that's true. And, you know, and like I said, in a way, it might have been good that after all those years, you children, especially Austin and David, they were ready to get out of it, really. But, you know, they were ready to get out of all of that.
You tired, Mama? We've been talking for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
You want to stop right now?
My throat's getting So,
Yeah. Okay.
but anyway, the history on that.
Yeah, I remember. Well, won't you just tell me something? Let's just talk some about your childhood here. And so,
Well, I may have told you something about it as we went along, Rudy. You know, about me trying to take Mama's place and all of that as a small child.
well,
But,
what about some of the happy things you remember? Do you have anything in particular about when you were growing up?
Well, I always knew that, you know, we were real close. And I always felt like that me being the oldest, that I was, you know, trying, because I knew I couldn't do like Mama. But I felt like, you know, that I would be taking her place and trying to do the things that she would do, had to do, and, you know, and see about the other children, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because she was just, you know, just sick, you know, most all the time. And so I just, you know, I just thought that's what I was supposed to do, you know. And just to, like, try to do the cooking, try to get off to school, try to get myself off to school for a while, but then, you know, it got where it was pretty hard, really. And then, you know, just do the washing and all that kind of stuff, you know. Of course, Tootie was little too, you know, but she helped. And
How much age difference were there between you and Aunt Tootie?
about 3 years.
3 years.
I imagine. Close to around 3 years, because I was born in 23, and I was a year and a half older than Bubba. That would make Bubba born in 24 or 25, and then it was maybe about that much space between. I'm about 3 years older than Tia, I think. 4 years older than Bigger, and about 8 years older than Pete. So that's why Pete always, but I didn't know that Pete always thought me being his mama, because he said I'm the one taking care of it.
How old were you when you were doing all this?
I couldn't have been too old, because I was only 8 years old when Pete was born. And a lot of times, you know, I'd kind of kid Pete, and all the other children would be out playing, and so I was in charge of Pete, you know, because he was just a baby. And I know how I would just rock him and sing to, trying my best to get him to sleep so I could go out and play. And I'd tell him, I said, and you just would not go to sleep, Pete. We'd dam up the branch. You know, back then, Ruth, they didn't have no pipes under none of it. All the branches from across the road. And we'd dam up the road, and all of us, young ones, Caddy Bell's children, and we'd go and swing, you know. And so that's what I wanted to do. But I had to, you know, I couldn't leave Pete. I had to take care of him.
Where was Mama at this time?
Mama was sick. I'm not sure if she was in the hospital or if she was at home. But she was either in the hospital or at home. And for a long time, she couldn't even walk, you know. And
What was Pawpaw doing at this time?
He was messing around, you know. He didn't have no job. The only jobs I ever knew he had was at the PWA. But he had to work hard, and he had to walk lots too, you know, to catch a truck. But anyway, and then I can remember all of us being little, and, you know, Papa, he never did go nowhere. He stayed home all the time. But Mama said, when I was in the hospital, and they thought, you know, that I wasn't going to make it, and Daddy come to see me. And so she
Now,
said.
when was this?
That was when, you remember when I had that surgery?
Oh, yeah, okay. You're talking about when you're...
Uh-huh.
All right.
And Mama said that she was real surprised at Daddy. But I remember Daddy coming to see me one time. Because, you know, they didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't have no blood, remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, I remember when I, you know, before I got married, that Daddy went over to the hospital to see Mom. And when he got back, he said, well, I got to tell y'all something. And we all got together. And he says, I don't think your Mama's going to live much longer. And all of us just started crying. And from then on, the rest of my life, all of us thought Mama was going to die. All the time we had that feeling Mama's going to die. And so, you know, really, that was kind of hard on the child, thinking, you know, that Mama was going to die. And we was real protected of her, you know. At least little thing. And so it and then, you know, time was hard then anyway.
Were you the only one that was unable to finish your high school education? Did the rest of them finish?
No. Big one regrets that to this day.
Yeah, you had to stop when you were in the 6th grade?
Yeah.
Is that right? And what about...
I think Big one went to about the 8th.
And he had to stop for the same reasons, because he had to work?
Yeah, he had to work. And he regrets it to this day.
Well, he's done real well also.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And I'm not sure about Bubba, because Bubba went in the service, I think, when he was about 16 years old. But now I think he, you know, maybe got some more education. I'm not sure if he ever went back to school or not. But he, you know, he went in the Air Force. And then, of course, Pete got to finish high school. Tootie didn't. Tootie didn't finish high school. I think Tootie went to about the 8th grade. And she got married, too. You know, she was young. And
so really, Pete was the only one that was able to finish.
Finished high school, right. And then Pete went in the Air Force, and he went in civil service. And he got his college education. He went to college.
Right.
And so I guess I got...
was that pretty common back then? I mean, when you went to school, were a lot of the people poor like y'all were?
Oh, yeah. But not as bad, I don't think, really, as... because, you know, we worked for other people too. And I remember when Pete was little, if it hadn't been for Maggie Mae and Coleman, they give Mama milk every day for Pete. I don't know what she'd have done, because she didn't have none. And you remember Sis, when they called Betty Jean.
Right.
Well, her and Pete, they were sweethearts. And yes, and Pete would run up that hill every day before he went to school to see her. And little old young, you know. And so I think both of them still remember. You know, they were going to get married.
Yeah.
First cousins. One of the first cousins. Yeah, they were first cousins. And Reen would say, now, say, well, if you married anybody, you had to marry whoever was out there, because you sure didn't go nowhere. And there wasn't nobody else
That's
to
right.
marry.
Wasn't that many people there, was
Well, and she said, and she always said, but I got the best Rucker. which I guess in a way she did. Ooh, they were rough. Those Ruckers were known to be rough people.
Yeah, when I was reading what Uncle Bigham wrote on there, they seemed to be pretty rough folks.
They were. And Granddaddy was a strong-willed person.
Guy Rucker?
Yes. Oh, Bigham says Bubba thinks he's a granddaddy. Everybody called him Uncle Dick.
Right.
And but Granddaddy was a small person. But see, Granddaddy never made Daddy do anything.
Yeah, I think you were telling me he just had to tend to the chickens and everything. Cause was he kind of sickly or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I told you about. Well, he didn't learn no responsibilities. He was growing up, Rudy.
Yeah.
But he wasn't dumb. You know, you could sit and talk to Pawpaw. You could tell he knew a lot about stuff that I didn't know. A lot of people don't know. But he just wanted, you know, mostly done what he wanted to do. And see, it wasn't really good for him because, you know, he never learned no responsibility. And I think, you know, as a child grows up, you should give them little things to do that they should be responsible for. But Granddaddy, you know, he probably didn't think nothing about it, you know, way back then. And so that was one thing. Granddaddy hired everything done. Colored people.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that movie last night?
Well, I didn't get to see the ending of it.
You didn't?
No, our power went off 5 minutes before it was over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, they finally made it through.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they made it through. Did it get to where that preacher had them in that wagon?
Well, it got to the point to where that guy that had sold the girl, he was standing up there and he was pulling out his little derringer, you know, getting ready to shoot, and then he got shot. But that's when the power. But who shot him? The girl.
The girl.
Good.
The girl. That was.
I'm sure everybody on this tape now know what movie we're talking about.
Oh, is that on?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know it was on.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah. But and then she fell out of the wagon.
Right. Yeah, she fell out of the wagon before. But then she shot that guy that sold her, and then they made it back.
They made it back to the other people, and they
made it on back to Canada.
I guess they got on that raft or whatever it was, you know, whoever was supposed to meet them there.
Good.
And so then that boy, that colored boy, and her got married.
Oh, good.
And then I think that her parents were satisfied with it. You know, because he said he wasn't, if she left it, he couldn't stay there.
Right.
You know. But I said, well, Rudy, it's not going to be too many more years to where there's not going to be no pure nationality.
May not be.
You know, really. Because they've been doing that up north for years.
How did Pawpaw get his land? Did his guy left it to him?
Mm-hmm.
What, he bought it?
Mm-hmm.
What was it, 300 acres or something? No, 160 acres or something?
I think so, Rudy.
So, and he was still living at the Wolf Place? Y'all were living at the Wolf Place when he bought it?
I guess. I really
What did he buy it with?
I really don't know that much about it, but just a few years back is when I was told more than what I really knew. It was the honest facts. See, Mr. Gordon Duramos owned that old house where we were all, us children were all raised. All of them were born there except me. And I was only just a small child. And so he didn't charge us no rent. Mr. Gordon did, Duramos. And that's who I worked for at the brick stove was his son, Sam. And so anyway, the new ones come along, and they wanted to buy the house. Well,
The Wolf place.
uh-uh.
Oh, where you were staying.
The old house where we were raised. Okay. They lived there and burned charcoal. And so then, I'm not sure, but I think that they bought the house or however it was. But anyway, they moved. And so Daddy didn't have nowhere to go to move to. And Granddaddy owned, I think Granddaddy owned the old Wolf place. And so Bubba had to get, it was embarrassing to Bubba. And anyway, I think rather than to go to court about it, I think Bubba must have helped out some way. And but they was about to, go to court about it. And see, Mama had told me that Daddy paid for it twice. But then I learned later that he didn't. And see, and Granddaddy told him that he was, he'd probably have to have some timber cut because he would need some money. And somehow or another, I think Daddy refused. I'm not sure. But now Bubba and Bigger knows more about it than I do. And but Daddy didn't pay for it twice, and to my understanding. And so it was kind of a sad thing. And of course, I think I can't say for sure whether Mama knew better or not, but that's what Mama told me.
Yeah.
And anyway, Daddy didn't want to move in the new house.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. After all that work that Biggin and then on it.
Bubba. And I think Bubba feels like right today that that was one reason that he and Jackie's marriage didn't work out. Because Jackie didn't even, he put all his money into that place up there.
Oh.
And sometimes Jackie wouldn't even have enough money to buy a cup of coffee. And, and just things like that. And so really, if it hadn't been for Bubba, Mama couldn't have gone to Maxwell. And there wouldn't have been no way that we could have bought all that medicine and paid all them doctor bills. And so actually, I think Bubba, as far as, supporting Mom and Daddy, of course, Bibbin sent money home too. And I didn't have no money, but I spent my time there a lot. And I done all that I could. And I would, try to cook when Mama had to go to the doctor. So, she, and I'd always try to carry him something. And we'd go up there, and we bought a lot of dog feed, a lot of cat feed, and a lot of feed for when he'd have cows and stuff. And Howard wouldn't take no pay for it. And we bought groceries for weeks. Because Mama told me one time when we went up there, she said, Margaret, we ain't had nothing to eat except some broth off of some rice. And so we started carrying some groceries up there. And different ones would pay Mama's light bill when she couldn't pay it. And
well, they didn't have any money coming in from anywhere, did they? How could they pay for anything?
Well, when Bubba went in service, see, Bubba started sending them some money. And so that's why Bubba, which I know Bubba, of course, Biggin did too, but I always felt like that I guess we all tried to do all we could for Mom and Daddy, you know, as the things that we could do. And you know, like with Bubba, when him and Pam come, now Bubba was going, they had already planned to get a place up at Myrtle Beach. They had just started Myrtle Beach then.
So they were going to live there?
Yeah, they were going to live there. And Mama didn't want them to. Mama didn't want me to marry Howard. And so.
Why didn't she?
Well, I guess she just wanted to know that she had us to depend on. I reckon, really, I don't know. And so Bubba and them, you know, they'd made plans and they were going to, you know, move there. And then Mama, I think, I can't say for sure, but I think Mama wrote them a letter because something about, I don't know whether Daddy was sick or whether she was sick or what. But anyway, Bubba and them come home. If Bubba had got that place, got that land then, he would have been worth some money now.
Yeah, that's true.
But see, we all felt obligated all the time, all of our life. And when we moved over Life, Mom would write me letters. Come home, Margaret. Come home. I was working. And a lot of times I'd have to be almost put out in the street. And so Bigger than Pete was fine. And she'd want, and I'd have to get off from work. And then I'd come home, you know, and stay. And it was just kind of, it was hard on all of us. So, well, Pete had it the easiest, but it wasn't Pete's fault. You know, it was just that he was born at that time. And so, but I don't regret it, Rudy. My conscience is clear because I feel like I've done.
Well, you did, and it should be clear.
All I could for Mom and Dad, you know. And I feel like, you know, maybe the rest of them did too. And I know, and that's why I said when you sold the first timber, that I told Biggin, I said, Biggin, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know how Peter feel about it. But I said, I feel as my part that Bubba should get more than I did because I knew that Bubba had fought as money-wise, that he had, you know, put more money into it, which I didn't have no money. And I mean, it was just a tight go. And almost lost the house one time anyway.
In Opelika or Montgomery?
No.
Which one?
We did. I did. The house down here. And it so happened because Howard didn't make no money, you know, when we first started to work. But anyway, going back to being buried, I thought, well, maybe I ought to talk to Bubba about that. I said, Bubba might want to be buried.
Because y'all have not arranged anything for being buried up at Old Kingston.
Right. And so I talked.
Is that what it's called, Old Kingston?
Yeah, Old Kingston. And so I thought, well, I better, might be that I should talk to Bubba about it. I said, Bubba may want to be buried by Mama. And I would think, I feel sure it'd be fine with Bubba for Howard to be buried there. And
I don't see why it would cause a problem.
I don't either. And the Biggin said he thought he should be. And so, but I said it'd make it so much better if you know, I tell you children, y'all know what to do, and there won't be no
squabble I knew that you wanted
it.
to be buried there, and I knew that Biggie wanted to be buried there, but I didn't ever figure that it would, that anybody else needed to be asked.
Well, I didn't either, but I thought about that, and so that's why I told Biggie. And so Biggin feels like, and I kind of feel like too, that Pete will probably be over there with his children. And then I had mentioned to Big, I said, I wish Tootie was over here. And I do.
Where is she?
In Opelika. And I said, you know, I lost respect for Mitt, and I think the rest of them has too. And of course, the woman that he married died, but I feel like maybe they'll put Mitt by two. And I'd rather Tootie be over here than over there, but that's where she's buried. And so that'd be left up with her children, I guess. You know, we couldn't just go over and do it. But I wish she was over here, because I know how she's treated. And but you know, that I couldn't go over there and say, well, we're going to bring Tootie back over here. You know, I feel like that would be her children's decision.
Well, you could just, if you wanted to mention it to Linda or somebody, maybe they could talk about it, so all of you could be together one day.
Yeah, and so Dickon said, well, Dylan says, do whatever you want to. Said, if you feel like you ought to mention it to Bubba, well, just go ahead and mention it to him. And if he wants to be buried there, well, fine, you know. And so.
Well, there's plenty of room, right?
Yeah, well, that's what Dickon said. You know, Dickon said there's plenty of room. And he said that's why he extended it on out, you know. And then him and Hicksy, see, they got their, had them there for a long time, headstones right below Mom and Dad. Because they said whenever they died, they knew it wouldn't be nobody that could be responsible for it. See, and they wanted to go ahead and put theirs up. And they knew that they'd be up, and they had what they wanted wrote on them, and that you've probably seen all of that. But anyway,
kind of unusual to already go somewhere and already see your headstone there.
Yeah, but see, that's why they did it, is because they said they knew that Becky couldn't do it, and they knew they didn't know about Lee. So that's why they done it. So, you know, they knew it'd be there and be like what they wanted.
Well, did you ever think years and years ago that you'd be secure in your old age, or secure at one point like you are now?
Never did. Never thought. I hoped that things would get better, but I never thought that it would be as well as it is. My goal was, Rudy, my first goal was that the Lord would let me live to see all you children grown and see what each one of you would be. Because I wanted, that's what I wanted, you children to have a good life and be able to enjoy life, do some things that y'all would enjoy, and that all of you would be able to get a good education. And so, you know, I think about a lot of times, you know, really, Rudy, after all of that, way back, I've been blessed because I've lived to see all of my children grown, and all of you never give me no trouble at all, and all of you, you know, of course Lane didn't want to go to college, but Lane's done good. You couldn't ask for a better mother. You couldn't ask for a better mother than Lane. And so, and I've seen my grandchildren. I've seen a lot, nearly all the grandchildren grown. And then I've seen my great-grandchildren. And and Howard has said a lot of times, you don't find a family that many children that all of them turned out like y'all, you know. And really, you don't. And Alan always says it's because we had a good mom. And I'll say, oh, mean mom. And sometimes I feel like that I did at times stress education too much on y'all. But
well, you can't stress it too much.
But Rudy, I wanted it so bad. You know, that was my goal. And then too, another thing was, David had it hard. And I wanted to be able one day to do something for David.
Mm-hmm.
That was another goal that I wanted to reach. Not that I loved one child more than I did the others. It was just that
he just had it so much harder.
And y'all know it. Because Austin had it hard too, to get an education. And it was hard on Austin because of his dad. And but he wanted to quit. He wanted to give up his college. I said, no, Austin, you go on. I said, we will make it. I said, I want you to get an education. And I think I told you that he cornbread and milk.
I remember mailing him cornbread, Mom.
Right, Lang does too. See, I cooked the cornbread and mailed it to
Then
him.
you boxed it up and I'd take it down and make it.
And made it, right. And see, that's what he lived on a year. And he would have had more money, but when he worked with his daddy, he didn't want to ask him for it. He put it on me to ask him. And he was going to give it back to him. He never did. See, Austin, then the money that he would have had to go to school, he didn't have.
Well, that's some father, isn't it? Taking it away from his own son's education.
He hated Austin. He fairly hated Austin. And because Austin was a better man than he was, I guess. And he was jealous. And Austin just couldn't stand it.
Austin didn't like him either, right?
No, because of the way he treated me, the way he treated them. David knows a lot about it. Lang remembers a lot about it. And I tried to keep everything hid just as long as I possibly could. But they were old enough to see themselves, and they knew. And I didn't know that David was about to kill him one time, but I knew Austin was. And I talked to Austin, I said, Austin don't do it. I said, he's not worth it. I said, if you ruin your life, you'll be the one to pay for it. And then it hadn't been too many years that David told me. He said, Mama, if he'd have made another move, I was fixing to kill him. So, see, they know. And it's a shame, though, really. It's just, it was all so uncalled for. It was just a terrible thing you couldn't depend on it. And like me and Woody was talking one time, and I told Woody, I said, Woody, he could talk you into anything if you didn't know no better. And Woody laughed. He said, I know that. And you couldn't believe a word he said. You couldn't believe a word he said. And
it's like, Ricky. Ricky and him are the same type person.
And he was one of the best mechanics that was in the South. Could make good money. Good mechanic. What good did it do? And I kept telling him all the time. I say, all these people that's getting your money. I said, you wait. I said, if you get sick, something happens to you, I said, they're not your friends. And they weren't really. You ask Lang. I think Lang has said that everything Mama told him come to pass. And of course, I'm not bragging, really. I'm not bragging at all because I didn't want for it to happen. Because, I guess I thought too much of it.
Well, you know, all in all, looking back, even though times you went through, you know, seems like everything
It did.
pretty
It
much
did.
turned out for the best for everybody.
It did. I think it did, really. In fact, Bub told me not long ago, he says, Dill, that was about the best thing that ever happened to you is when you married Howard. And, you know, they all always liked him, you know, and all of Bubba's children liked him. But, you know, no marriage I don't think is perfect, really.
Mm.
Everybody has their own difference, but you have to try to work it out. And and that was one reason that because I was still young, and that was one reason that I married again. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't want you children to have to be responsible. Well, like when I got sick that time, I wouldn't have had no way of going in no hospital. What would I have done? See, I thought about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and so it wasn't that it wasn't that I wanted to marry somebody because I thought they had money, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life by myself, and I didn't want to be.
Nobody does.
And then, like I was telling you, you know, that was a hard decision for you to make, wasn't it, Ruth?
Oh yeah.
It was hard, wasn't it, Ruth?
Sure was.
And so all in all, like I said, about picking, I didn't want to choose for you, but I didn't want you to get into something that would mess you up.
Well, let me have me a hug and a kiss, and I'll get on film with you.
Oh,
You're the best mama anybody could have.
Well, thank you.
So looking there in the camera now, and tell David and Austin, Lane, and everybody that who your favorite son is.
All of you. All of you.
Well, we know who the favorite daughter is.
Yeah, it has to be, don't it?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, that daughter wouldn't let nobody bother her brother.
That's
I'll
for sure.
tell you that right now, Rudy. She'd jump on him in a minute. She
Yeah.
would. She'd jump on him
All
in a
right.
minute. She wouldn't.
Well,